Dr. June Park frowned at the screen in his lab. Something was wrong with his work again. For the third time this month, his genetic samples had changed overnight. He checked his equipment once more, but everything seemed to be working fine. "Computer run diagnostic check again," June said, rubbing his tired eyes. "Diagnostic complete. All systems operating at optimal levels," the computer replied in its calm voice. June sighed and looked at the time. He had to report this to Mekki. Soon. Mek was the head scientist on the research ship Celestial Pioneer and would not be happy about another problem with the human lab's results. The door to his lab slid open with a soft hiss. Subin Kim, the ship's human doctor, walked in carrying 2 steaming cups. "Thought you could use some coffee," she said, placing 1 cup beside him. "You've been in here all night again." June took the cup gratefully. "Thanks, I needed this." The samples changed again. Subin raised an eyebrow. "Equipment failure?" "That's what Mek will think, but no. I've checked everything 3 times. The DNA is actually mutating at rates that our alien friends find impossible to believe." Subin leaned over to look at his screen. The display showed 2 genetic sequences side by side, one from yesterday and one from today. They were similar but with clear differences. "Have you tried explaining that human DNA just does this?" she asked. "I've tried, but it's hard for them to understand. Most species in the Confederation have very stable genes. Mutations are rare for them, and usually harmful." A soft beep from the computer interrupted them. "Dr. Park, Science Director, Mek requests your presence in the main laboratory." June drained his coffee. "Here we go again, wish me luck." The main laboratory of the Celestial Pioneer was much larger than June's personal lab. Scientists from 12 different species worked here, studying everything from star formation to microbiology. At the center of it all stood Mek, the Volari, head scientist. Volari were tall beings with smooth blue skin and eyes that looked like cut crystals. They were known across the galaxy for their careful, methodical approach to science. Mek's eyes glittered as June entered. "Dr. Park," Mek said, his voice like stones rolling together. "Your report indicates another anomaly in your genetic research." "It's not an anomaly, Director Mek," June replied politely. "It's normal human genetic behavior." Several alien scientists had stopped their work to listen. This wasn't the first time they had heard this discussion. "Normal?" Mek's crystal eyes widened slightly. "You claim that unstable genetic patterns are normal?" June walked to the main display and uploaded his data. The large screen showed the changing patterns in his samples. "Yes, human DNA naturally mutates at a rate that seems chaotic to most Confederation standards. But for us, this is how we've always been." "Impossible," muttered a Trellan scientist from across the room. Trellans, with their insect-like features, had the most stable genetic code in the known galaxy. No species could survive such instability. Subin, who had followed June to the main lab, stepped forward. "Not only do we survive it, but it's also how humans became the dominant species on our planet." She touched the screen, zooming in on specific sections of the DNA. "Our immune systems mutate constantly to fight new diseases. Our brain cells can express different genetic patterns even within a single human. Our gut bacteria evolve within our lifetimes to help us digest new foods." The lab grew quiet. The aliens were staring at the humans with a mixture of disbelief and something else. Was it fear? Mek moved closer to the display, his tall form looming over June. "If what you say is true, then your species is unlike any we have encountered." "That's what I've been trying to explain," June said. "Humans don't just accept mutation, we depend on it. It's our evolutionary strategy." "Strategy?" A Nuvari botanist named Pell joined the conversation. Her plant-like features quivered with interest. "You speak as if your genetic code makes choices." "Not conscious choices," June explained. "But over millions of years, humans evolved in an environment that changed rapidly. Species that couldn't adapt quickly died out. Our ancestors survived because they could change faster than their environment." The aliens exchanged glances. This concept seemed to disturb them deeply. "Is this why humans recover from injuries so quickly?" asked Pell, Last month, Dr. Kim cut her hand, and 3 days later there was barely a mark. Subin nodded. Our cells replace themselves constantly. Some of our organs, like our liver, can even regrow parts that are damaged. And your short lifespans? Mech asked. Humans lived only about a quarter as long as most Confederation species. Is this connected? Possibly, June admitted. Our cells divide rapidly, which helps us heal but might limit how long we can live. Everything has a trade-off. Mech was quiet for a long moment, studying the data on the screen. I believe I owe you an apology, Dr. Park. I assumed your equipment was faulty, but it seems I was simply unfamiliar with how your species functions. No apology needed, June said with a smile. We're all learning from each other here. Indeed, Mech replied, but his crystalline eyes were thoughtful. Perhaps we have much more to learn from humans than we realized. That night, June was recording his daily log when a priority message flashed on his screen. It was marked with the highest security clearance and came directly from Galactic Confederation Command. He opened it, curious what could be so important. The message was brief. RE human mutation rates, classified level alpha. All research related to human genetic mutation rates is now designated top priority. Please send all data to Confederation Central Science Division immediately. Further human genetic specialists are requested for multiple research stations. Below this was a second note, added by the ship's captain. Dr. Park, we've received 17 requests for your expertise from various worlds in the past 6 hours. Whatever you discovered has gotten the attention of every major scientific body in the Confederation. June sat back in his chair, stunned. He hadn't discovered anything new. He'd just been trying to explain basic human biology. His personal communicator buzzed. It was Subin. Did you get the message? She asked when he answered. Yes, he replied. I don't understand. Why is everyone suddenly so interested in human DNA? I think I know, she said, her voice excited. I overheard some Volari scientists talking. Many worlds in the Confederation are facing problems they can't solve with their stable genetics. Crop diseases, changing climates, new space viruses. They've been looking for solutions for decades, and now they think humans might have the answer. June finished, finally understanding. Exactly. They don't just want to study us anymore, June. They want to learn from us. As he ended the call, June looked out his viewport at the stars. Humans had joined the Galactic Confederation just 15 years ago, seen as newcomers with primitive technology and short lives. Now, it seemed, the galaxy had found something valuable in humanity. After all, not their technology or their strength, but their ability to change. 6 months had passed since the discovery aboard the Celestial Pioneer. Han-Sol Lee stood at the edge of a vast field on the Nuvari homeworld, watching the sun rise over sickly crops. As Earth's top genetic engineer, he never thought he would be working so far from home. The air here was thinner than Earth's and the gravity slightly stronger. Han-Sol had been on the planet for only 2 weeks, but his body was already adapting. Humans were good at adapting. That was why he was here. Does it look as bad as the report said? Asked a soft voice behind him. Han-Sol turned to see Triz, the Nuvari elder who had requested his help. Nuvari were plant-like beings with bark-textured skin and leafy hair that changed colors with the seasons. Triz's hair was a dull brown now, a sign of the stress her people were facing. Yes, Han-Sol answered honestly. But that doesn't mean we can't fix it. Triz looked out at the dying crops. Our world is changing too fast. For millions of years, this planet stayed the same. Our people never needed to adapt quickly. Until now, Han-Sol said. Until now, Triz agreed. That is why we called for you. Humans know how to change. Han-Sol nodded and pointed to the fields. Your crops have almost no genetic variety. They're all basically the same plant copied over and over. That is our way, Triz explained. When we find something that works well, we keep it the same. Why change what is already perfect? Because nothing stays perfect forever, Han-Sol replied gently. Environments change. New diseases appear. On Earth, farmers have known this for thousands of years. Even before we understood science, we practiced something called selective breeding. Hansol took out his tablet and showed Triz pictures of earth crops, corn, wheat, potatoes, each one looking very different from its wild ancestors. We started with plants that grew in the wild, he explained, and over many generations, we chose the ones with traits we wanted. Some for bigger fruit, some for resistance to cold, some for fighting off pests. Triz looked confused. You made them change on purpose? Yes. And now we can do it much faster and more precisely. Hansol smiled. With your permission, I'd like to set up a test field. I'll introduce controlled mutations into your crop genome. Not enough to make them completely different, just enough to help them adapt to the new conditions. Triz's leafy hair rustled nervously. Many of my people will see this as wrong. Deliberate mutation seems unnatural to us. I understand, Hansol said, but sometimes the most natural thing is to change. 3 weeks later, Hansol stood in a special dome with a group of Nuvari scientists. Inside the dome were rows of test crops growing in soil brought from the dying fields. But unlike the plants outside, these were thriving. I don't understand, said Pell, the head Nuvari botanist. They look like our food plants, but they're surviving in conditions that should kill them. They are your plants, Hansol explained, just with more diversity in their genetic code. He walked along the rows, pointing out differences. This variety has deeper roots to reach more water. This one has a waxy coating on the leaves to reduce water loss. This one can process the changing soil minerals more efficiently. And you did all this in just 3 weeks? Pell asked, amazed. No, Hansol laughed. Nature did most of the work over millions of years. These adaptations already existed in wild relatives of your crops. I just helped bring them together in useful combinations. An older Nuvari named Voss stepped forward. His bark-like skin was cracked with age. I have studied the old records. Long ago, before we became farmers, our food plants had more differences. We thought those differences were flaws to be removed. Not flaws, Hansol said. Insurance. Nature keeps extra traits around because they might be useful someday. Triz, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. How soon can we begin growing these new varieties in our fields? We can start the first full-scale planting next week, Hansol replied. But that's just the beginning. I want to teach your scientists how to continue this work themselves, to keep adding useful traits as your world continues to change. You would share this knowledge with us? Triz asked. Of course. That's why I'm here. The first harvest came, 2 months later. Hansol stood with Triz and the Nuvari Council as workers brought in samples from the fields. The new crops had not just survived, they had produced more food than the old varieties ever had, even in better conditions. Many of the council members were touching the harvested plants with wonder. Some had tears in their eyes. You have saved our people, Triz said simply. Hansol shook his head. You saved yourselves by being willing to try something new. Many species would have refused to change their ways. Voss, the elder scientist, approached with a data tablet. We have been studying the communication patterns from other worlds. Word of this success is spreading. 3 other systems have already requested human genetic experts to help with similar problems. And the Confederation Science Council wants to establish a permanent human genetic advisory team, Triz added. Hansol was surprised. That's a big change from 6 months ago, when most species thought human mutation rates were a disadvantage. Perspective changes everything, Triz said. Her leafy hair had turned a healthy green again. What seems like a weakness in one situation becomes strength in another. Later that day, Hansol received a message from Earth. The Galactic Confederation had approved a new program allowing human geneticists to work throughout Confederation space. Dozens of worlds were requesting help with problems that had seemed unsolvable before. Disease-resistant animals, crops for changing climates, even new medicines. Humans, once seen as primitive newcomers to galactic society, were suddenly the most sought-after consultants in the Confederation. As Hansol prepared for bed that night, he looked out his window at the twin moons of the Nuvari homeworld. He thought about his ancestors, Simple farmers who had selected the best seeds each year without understanding the science behind their work. Those farmers could never have imagined that their basic practices would someday help save alien worlds. The next day would bring new challenges. Han Sol was scheduled to meet with scientists from the Volari system who wanted to discuss something they called genetic therapy, using controlled mutations to help their people adapt to space travel. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy, not through superior technology or military might, but through their unique relationship with change itself. What other species feared, humans had embraced for thousands of years. And now, the galaxy was learning to embrace it too. Jiho Kang stood tall on the bridge of the Starship Evolutionary Vanguard. This was no ordinary ship. It was the first vessel ever built using human mutation principles. Jiho felt proud to be its captain, even though many in the Confederation had doubted the project would work. "Captain, all systems are ready," said Min Choi, his science officer. "The ship is prepared for its first adaptive test." Jiho nodded and looked around at his crew. Some were human, but most were aliens who had come to believe in the human approach to change. There were Volari, Nuvari, Trellans, and even a few species Jiho had never worked with before. All of them were here because they wanted to be part of something new. "Thank you, Officer Choi," Jiho said. "Begin integration sequence." Min's fingers moved over the control panel. Integration sequence starting now. The lights on the bridge dimmed slightly as power shifted to the ship's special systems. Unlike normal starships with fixed parts, the Vanguard was designed to change. Its hull contained special bacteria that could adapt to different types of space radiation. Its computers used programs based on how human brains changed and learned. Even its life support could shift to match different environments. "Captain," the ship's computer announced. "All adaptive systems are now online." Jiho turned to his communications officer, a Trellan named Ziv. "Send word to Confederation Command, tell them we're ready to enter the test zone." 3 star systems had been hit by something the scientists called the Void Plague, a space disease that changed faster than anyone could fight it. Normal quarantine methods had failed. Ships sent to help had become infected themselves. The Confederation was desperate for a solution. That's when someone remembered the humans and their strange comfort with mutation. "Message sent, Captain," Ziv reported. "Command wishes us success and safe return." The unsaid part hung in the air. The Confederation Council wasn't sure if they would return at all. "Set course for the quarantine zone," Jiho ordered. "Low. Speed approach." The Vanguard moved forward smoothly, its engines humming with a sound unlike any other ship. As they traveled, Jiho remembered how this mission had started. 1 year earlier, Jiho had been a simple transport pilot when he received an unusual message. The Confederation Science Division wanted to talk to him about a new kind of ship. Not because he was the best pilot, but because of something in his medical records. "You survived the Mars colony fever," the Volari scientist had told him. "Your body adapted to the virus in a way no one has seen before." Jiho remembered that. Time well. 200 colonists had died. He had been sick for weeks but lived. "My doctor said I was lucky," Jiho had replied. "Not lucky. Special," the scientist corrected. "Your genes allowed for faster mutation responses than most humans. We want to use that pattern in a new ship design." Now, a year later, Jiho was captain of that very ship, heading toward the greatest test possible. "Captain, we're approaching the quarantine boundary," Min reported. "Sensors detect high levels of the void plague particles ahead." Jiho took a deep breath. "Slow to minimum speed. Begin recording all data. Activate all adaptive systems at full capacity." The ship moved into the contaminated zone. On the main screen, Jiho could see a faint purple haze, the visible sign of the plague. "Void plague particles making contact with our hull now," Min said, her voice steady despite the danger. Everyone on the bridge held their breath. In normal ships, this would be the moment when systems started to fail as the plague changed the ship's materials at the molecular level. Instead, the Vanguard hummed louder. Lights flickered across control panels as the ship's adaptive systems encountered the threat and began to respond. "Captain," Min called out, excitement in her voice. "The hull bacteria are changing already. They're producing a new protein layer that the plague can't attach to. Computer systems are adapting as well," reported the Volari engineer. "The plague's information-disrupting effects are being countered by our shifting algorithms." Jiho watched the displays with amazement. The ship wasn't just resisting the plague, it was learning from it. "How long until we have a full adaptation profile?" Jiho asked. Min checked her readings. "At current rates, we should have workable protection in about 72 hours. 3 days. They would need to stay in the contaminated zone for 3 days, letting their ship change and adapt to one of the most dangerous things in the galaxy. Send word to command. Tell them we're staying in the zone until adaptation is complete," Jiho ordered. For 3 tense days, the Vanguard drifted through the purple haze. The crew watched as their ship's systems mutated thousands of times per hour, a rate that would have destroyed any normal vessel. Some systems failed temporarily. Parts of the ship lost power. The temperature control fluctuated. But each time the systems came back online, stronger and more resistant than before. On the 3rd day, Min Choi rushed onto the bridge with a tablet in her hand. "Captain, we've done it. The ship has developed an effective defense against the plague." Jiho studied the data. The Vanguard's adaptive systems had created a pattern that neutralized the plague's effects. Even better, the pattern could be transmitted to other systems. "Plot a course to the nearest infected planet," Jiho ordered. "Let's see if we can help them too." As the Vanguard approached the quarantine planet, something remarkable happened. The ship began broadcasting its adaptation pattern. When the pattern reached the planet's systems, they began to fight back against the plague. "We're receiving a transmission from the planet's governor," Ziv announced. They say the plague is retreating from their main computer networks. They haven't been able to use their communication systems for weeks, but now they're coming back online." A cheer went up from the bridge crew. Jiho smiled but remained focused. "Send them the full adaptation protocol. Make sure they understand how to keep implementing changes as the plague tries to counter." Over the next few weeks, the evolutionary Vanguard visited all 3 infected systems. In each place, they shared the ship's adaptive patterns, teaching the local systems how to change and fight back. The plague didn't disappear completely, but its advance was stopped. 2 months later, Jiho stood in the Great Hall of the Confederation Council. Leaders from every major species had gathered to hear about the mission's success. "Captain Kang," said the council leader, "your ship has done what our best scientists thought impossible. You've shown us that adaptation can be a strength, not a weakness." Jiho bowed slightly. "The credit belongs to everyone who worked on the Vanguard project. We humans simply shared what we've always known, that life must change to survive." As the ceremony ended, Jiho received a message. The Confederation had approved funding for 10 more ships like the Vanguard. Each would have both human and alien crews, working together to spread the new adaptive approach throughout the galaxy. Humans hadn't just brought their mutation abilities to the stars. They had taught the galaxy how to embrace change itself. 50 years had passed since the evolutionary Vanguard first showed the galaxy the power of adaptive systems. Now, Yuri Choi stood before the Galactic Confederation Assembly as the first human to serve as High Chancellor. At 78 years old, she was young for such a position. Most species in the Confederation lived for centuries, making her seem like a child to them. But times had changed. Behind Yuri stretched a huge screen showing 2 images of the galaxy. The first showed how things looked 50 years ago. The second showed the present day. "Fellow beings of the Confederation," Yuri began, her voice strong and clear in the vast hall. "Today we celebrate the completion of the Mutation network. Every world in our Confederation is now connected to this adaptive grid. This allows helpful changes to be shared across species while harmful ones are spotted and stopped." The hall filled with applause. Many of the delegates were old enough to remember when genetic change was seen as dangerous. Now they embraced controlled adaptation as their greatest tool. Humans did not bring the idea of mutation to the galaxy. Yuri continued. Every species experiences mutation. What we brought was a different way to see it, not as a flaw to fear, but as a chance to grow. In the front row sat Lex, the oldest, member of the assembly, a Volari who had been present when humans first joined the Confederation. He had seen the entire journey. He raised his hand to speak. High Chancellor, if I may address the assembly. Yuri nodded. Of course, Elder Lex. The ancient Volari rose slowly. His crystal eyes had dimmed with age, but his voice was still strong. When humans first came to the stars, we thought them simple, Lex said. Their lives were short. Their technology was basic. Their bodies seemed weak, but they carried inside them the most powerful force in the universe. The ability to change, to adapt, to become something new without losing what they were. Yuri smiled as Lex continued. We feared mutation because we saw only its dangers. Humans feared it too, but they also saw what it could give them. They learned to guide it, to work with it instead of against it. And by teaching us to do the same, they have made our civilization stronger than we ever imagined possible. Lex turned to face the entire assembly. 50 years ago, when Captain Kang's ship stopped the Void Plague, some called it luck. When Hansol Lee saved the Nuvari crops, some said it was just clever farming. When Dr. Park first showed us human DNA's unusual properties, many thought it was a flaw in his equipment. A gentle laugh moved through the crowd. Those old misunderstandings seemed so foolish now. But it was none of those things, Lex said. It was the start of the greatest shift in Confederation history, what we now call the adaptive revolution. Yuri nodded her thanks as Lex sat down. The adaptive revolution has changed every part of our society, she said. Our ships now evolve to meet new space conditions. Our colonies adapt to their planets instead of trying to force planets to suit them. Our medicine changes as fast as diseases do. She touched a control and the big screen showed new images, adaptive buildings that grew stronger in storms, computers that evolved better security against attacks, and farms that changed with the shifting climate. Most importantly, Yuri said, we have learned that different approaches make us stronger together. Each species brings unique gifts to our Confederation. Some bring stability and long planning. Some bring careful thinking. Humans bring adaptation. A Nuvari delegate named Trell raised her hand. She was the granddaughter of Triz, who had worked with Hansol Lee decades ago. High Chancellor, the new longevity treatments developed through the Mutation Network. Are the rumors true about their effects? Yuri smiled. This was the news many had been waiting for. Yes, the rumors are true. The Adaptive Health Initiative has produced treatments that may extend the lifespan of all Confederation species. For some, it might add decades. For others, including humans, it could mean centuries. Murmurs of amazement filled the hall. Humans, once the shortest-lived of the major species, had used their gift for adaptation to change even that basic limit. These treatments work by teaching cells how to adapt better as they age, Yuri explained. They are based on the rare genetic patterns first noticed in humans like Captain Jiho Kang, who showed unusual adaptive abilities. Now, these patterns can be shared with everyone. After the assembly ended, Yuri returned to her office. A message waited from Earth. It contained news from the latest research. The Mutation Network had produced an unexpected benefit. It was helping species communicate better with each other. The adaptive translation systems were learning to understand not just words but cultural meanings across species. Yuri looked out the window at the Confederation capital city. When she was a child, humans were newcomers to the galactic community, seen as primitive and short-lived. Now, just 50 years later, human approaches to change had transformed the galaxy. Her door chimed softly. Enter, she called. Dr. Jin Park walked in, carrying a data tablet. He was the grandson of Dr. June Park, whose work on the Celestial Pioneer had started it all. High Chancellor, I have the latest reports from the Vega system, Jin said. Their adaptive terraforming project is working even better than expected. The planet might be ready for full settlement in just 5 years instead of 20. Excellent news, Yuri replied. And how is your grandfather? Is he still working on that history book? Jin smiled. Yes, he just finished it, actually. From Feared to Favored, The Human Path in Galactic Society. He says it's strange to write about events he lived through. Tell him I look forward to reading it, Yuri said. It's important to remember how we got here. After Jin left, Yuri prepared for her next meeting. Representatives from a newly discovered species were waiting to discuss joining the Confederation. They came from a harsh world with rapidly changing conditions, and they had evolved an unusual ability to adjust their body chemistry to match their environment. The preliminary reports suggested they might adapt even faster than humans. Yuri smiled at the thought. Once, such a trait would have made other species fear them. Now, it made them valuable potential partners. That change in thinking was perhaps the greatest mutation of all, one that had happened not in bodies, but in minds. The galaxy's favorite mutation machines had worked their most important change on the very idea of what life could be.